Hi there, marketers. My name is Chris,
And I'm Asim.
and we are back with a new episode of the Marketing Mavericks show. Today, we will uncover some groundbreaking marketing automation strategies using email automation. First of all, thank you so much for your interest in the first show. We got some really interesting feedback, and we're excited to now really dive into the real marketing strategies. And today we fully look into what we do for email automation, what tools we use, what strategies we use, what we have built that I think goes beyond what other people are doing. And Wasim is going to share that today on the screen, and we're going to just go right into that. So first of all, how are you doing, Wasim?
Very well, thanks, Chris. And first of all, thank you everyone for your kind support. So uh, overall, I would feel obviously there's lots of things happening in the world, but for us, we're pushing hard to make sure whatever time we're spending is going to give us benefits in the long term. So marketing automation is one of the things which Chris and I have been looking for the last, I think, 6 months now. And we are very excited to share with you what we've been up to.
Yeah, exactly. So, and my first question would be, you're you have always been focused on landing page design. You've been doing that for years and shared that in the last episode that you've built more than 500 landing pages. And I know in the last months, maybe in the last 4 months, you kind of fully went into email automation. So my first question is basically, what got you excited about this from
Yeah.
basically being so focused on landing page design, now jumping into this field?
So I would kind of probably use the term marketing automation because it's like email marketing or email automation is, let's say, part of that. So if you look at the journey of a lead which comes through either from, let's say, organic or PPC, eventually they get captured on the website or through a lead capture page or through a landing page, and ends up into a system. And that's effectively where you would want to, first of all, manage them and then do something about them. A lot of businesses I know, they capture leads quite a lot. And if they don't buy from them, they just ignore them. And same was the case with us. So for example, in our agency, we had obviously leads come through and some of them obviously didn't work with us for one reason or the other. And eventually they just were left there. And I thought that was a problem because it's almost like money on the table. Like, what can we do with these leads? And then I started looking into email automation and finding ways of how to kind of keep in touch with these contacts so that we are continuously like nurturing them, giving them value, and eventually trying to bring them back and establish a relationship. And landing pages is obviously the way you would capture that lead, but then the next step of like management and nurturing is almost like the next progression. So in an ideal world, you will have lead capture, lead management, and lead nurture. So we're now looking at the full kind of life cycle of a lead.
Right. So, and who would you say needs such a solution? Like, who in the field of B2B marketing should invest time, effort into really building an automated funnel? Whereas you could also say, I keep it simple. I use Gmail. I use a sales team, and I delegate all of this. What would you advise? Who should have this in place?
I think any small to medium-sized enterprise must have it, and also we already know large enterprises, spend thousands of pounds to get this in place. But with new technologies, it's now getting cheaper for small to medium-sized enterprises to focus on and to get these platforms and systems in place, which maybe like 2 or 3 years back were so expensive that you couldn't even dream of having that kind of stuff. So I think the biggest advantage is if you don't have it, what else do you have in place? Would you then have, let's say, a manual process where somebody would set up a schedule in the calendar and then start emailing people, let's say every week, or sending them value by, sending them messages regularly? So I usually, when I speak to customers, I tell them it's like your best salesperson on autopilot.
Right.
So that's how I see it. Like you literally have a system which works for you 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alternative could be basically build the automation as in the sense of having a team, let's say a sales team, a follow-up team that would do all of that. and run it this way. And I think probably that's the way a lot of companies are doing it, a lot of SMEs.
Yeah.
What would you say is the current landscape looking how does the landscape look like? Like how many brands actually have these systems in place? Like if you, let's say, draw a picture of the whole industry landscape, and how many do it well, how many do it advanced, and how many do you think are kind of at the bottom of the scale in a way?
I mean, I've seen a trend where consultancies where they have less than 10 or 20 people, they don't have a CRM in place. They don't have a system in place where they nurture leads, capture them, manage them, know exactly where the lead is. Again, it depends on the team size, but if you have more than, let's say, one person selling, then you need a system. Otherwise, how else would you know who's managing which lead? So for example, let's say there's 2 salespeople in the company and they're managing a list of leads. They need a way to either manage the leads between themselves and to keep on top of the leads and to provide almost some kind of a visibility on like where that lead is. So I would say if you are in that situation where you're already feeling there's a problem where leads are not getting nurtured, leads are not getting managed efficiently, then you need a system. You need a CRM and also nurturing systems.
Yeah. So you would say it's kind of the majority that, I mean, should have it, but in some sense is not implemented. Like when you see
Yes.
that working with clients, a lot of them
Yeah.
probably, even like I see it also, I'm obviously also working with clients, a lot of even bigger brands, let's say more traditional brands, brick and
Yeah.
mortar brands, they often go with the simplest solutions, right?
Yeah. I think if you tell majority of people like what kind of CRM you're using, they will say MailChimp.
Yeah.
Well, MailChimp is good for the job, but it's like only one piece of the puzzle where it would capture your kind of email subscribers and you can send them emails. But yeah, it does the job, but it's not like geared up for the advanced stuff.
Yeah. Or the other thing is they have these systems in place. A lot of them, I think, use HubSpot, but
Yes.
then they use it only on a superficial level of having of kind of just they want to know they use it, like they want to say, oh, I'm using HubSpot, but they forget about all the capabilities of what it can do and the way it can integrate.
Yeah, unfortunately, HubSpot is so big and it's gone so wide. I find it very hard to like really get grips on it. For example, if you really have to understand the power of using HubSpot, you need to have at least 2 or 3 people dedicated completely in your company who then know how to use HubSpot. I think same was the case with Infusionsoft. Some years back, it became so convoluted that people started calling it Confusionsoft, only because and they actually have changed the name now. It's called Keep.
Oh, I didn't know
Um,
that actually. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I think it got the term Confusionsoft associated with it.
Yeah. Um, Speaking about tools, like before we jump into what you've built in the funnel, um, what do you think are the leading tools you would advise companies to use?
I think there's a simple gauge system which I've come up with, which is can you capture the lead? Can you manage the lead? And can you nurture a lead? If you can do 3 of these things within your system, then I would say stick with your system. But obviously, there are so many other systems out there. My favorite one is ActiveCampaign. The only reason I love it most is because, first of all, it does all the 3 things which we just discussed, and also it's relatively cheap. Like it's so cheap than any other tool out there, especially like it can compete with a HubSpot for SME requirements, and it costs fraction of the cost of HubSpot.
Right. Okay. So why don't we just jump into the screen and maybe look into what you've built? I've seen it before briefly,
Yeah.
but I think it's so fascinating what kind of stuff you can build with these tools. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that's also new to me, and I'm sure to a lot of users. Yeah. Let's just jump right in.
Okay, cool. So let's kind of dwell into this topic a bit more. So you have a system which could capture leads, and you will have a lead management system and a lead nurture system. So that's your kind of maybe a CRM, or I would say marketing automation. So in lead capture, obviously we know, for example, leads can come through your website. They can come through your landing page. They can come through lead gen. So lead gen is the form builder tool which Chris and I built, and it allows you to generate leads in a form system which is so efficient that you can put it on a landing page, or you can put it on a webinar, on a website, or you can just use it on its own. Similarly, you could have other CTA things like pop-ups. So there's all these ways you can generate leads. Even now, like you can generate leads through Facebook ads directly through Facebook leads ads. Okay, cool. So once you obviously capture this lead, you have to then put them in a place where you can easily view this information. And I would say the main focus should be have a system which allows you to put information in lists. So for example, in ActiveCampaign, we currently have a few type of lists. One is customers, because obviously we want to make sure that our customers are in their own list so that we can send them emails which are obviously different to prospects. So for example, in our case, we have customers and prospects in two separate lists. And the ability to then also tag them. So if a lead comes through, you want to understand what they were interested in the first place, what kind of service they wanted in the first place, so that you can tag them with that information. And any point, if you want to nurture them in the future, you have that information tagged or associated with that contact, and it's always in your system. So that way, anytime in the future, where they've come from, what they were interested in, and what kind of stuff they have done. So you need a system which manages and creates these associations, and then obviously assign them to deals. So in a typical CRM, you would have a deal when somebody comes in and fills out a form on your website. You will associate a deal with it. And if the deal turns, let's say you win the deal or deal is won, you would then move them to the customer list, or if the deal was lost, you would move them to the prospects list, so that you then have a grip of this contact and you know where they are in your CRM, and you can then send obviously automated emails in the future.
Yeah. So just briefly, like for all of those that are just listening in on audio, we're kind of drawing here some kind of chart on the tablet, which has 3 columns: lead capture, lead management, lead nurture, and yeah, basically going through this concept of building different lists. But yeah, the idea is just like moving them from one stage to the next. And also, I assume what you do is you kind of have different levels. So when you look at lists here, the prospect is, let's say, the level 1, which is like better than the visitor level. You have the data that you have captured and then moving it up to customer. So that's kind of
that's correct
concept here.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, like, obviously different companies as well. Some people even want to have lists for their people who've been onto the events. So for example, they have a physical event they go to, they collect all these business cards, so they would add them to an events list. And some people have like different events, lists to manage the data. So as long as you can make sense of that list, I would say organize it well, but don't go like overboard with it. Like you have so many lists that it kind of there's a gray line between a tag and a list. But yeah, just make sure you don't overdo lists that they end up being used as tags. So the other thing which obviously comes under lead management is segmentation. Segmentation would allow you to obviously segment customers or segment your lists based on different tags. So for example, if somebody's shown interest in a particular service, you would then only want to segment them out and send them, let's say, emails based on that particular service. So segmentation is really powerful. It's kind of like filtering your list. And then the third step in this whole automation piece is lead nurture. And I would say nurturing is quite important. And this is where you define exactly how your automation runs on Autopilot. And in the future, it can reap you huge rewards. So for example, the first one, which I really love, is the long-term nurture sequence, LTN. We call it LTN. And this one basically means that you want to start a sequence if a deal is lost. So for example, in our case, when the deal is marked as lost, they are added to the prospects list and they get straight away on the LTN sequence. And it goes back to the original piece where, for example, in our lead capture system, like lead gen, we have a field where we ask customers or our prospects, what are you interested in? And if they show an interest, let's say they say we are interested in a landing page. So we would tag them with the word interest landing page, which will obviously then flow into our lead management system. And then it will kick off a long-term nurture sequence based on the interest tag. So now, because we know where they come from, we would only start that sequence.
Yeah. So how many different variations do you have in lead nurture based on tags? Could you say like, I have 4 different funnels, or like how much do you differentiate based on tags in the nurture?
So in nurture, for example, you could have, let's say if you want to, in our case, let me break it down. Because we do marketing automation, we do websites, and we do landing pages, we want to start with one sequence at a time. But we do have 3 long-term nurture sequences, and they are for these particular service areas. So if somebody's shown interest in landing page, we don't want to get them on a marketing automation landing page. Oh, sorry, marketing automation long-term nurture sequence, because it's not relevant to them at that point.
And this is also, I think, something which so many people in the industry just skip, this part of let's say relevance and personalization.
Yes.
I mean, it's unbelievable like how much this matters, because if you think about it, if you walk into a store and if you ask for certain types of shoes in a shoe store, you don't want to see anything else other than this. And online, all of a sudden people forget it. They send you generic emails, or a common thing also people do is these newsletters with, let's say, 8 or 10 different articles in it. Okay, maybe you could say, yeah, you want to find out of them, you want to find something relevant, but the better way in my view would be just to give them exactly what they want.
Yeah, and that's actually a very, very good point, because I have email newsletters as part of lead nurture, but that's something which is quite generic, as you said. You could segment it out, but it gets very complicated. Email newsletters are more or less like news items which you want to share as of time. So for example, today you will send out a newsletter and you will talk about COVID, or you will talk about some certain things which are happening now. Whereas a long-term nurture sequence is set in time. So you would always send them sequentially. And the whole idea of a long-term nurture sequence is to entertain, to educate, and to engage. So eventually you want to show your story, you want to show like you are the industry expert of whatever you're offering, and you back it up with real case studies, you back it up with actionable, let's say, techniques and tips which can help your subscriber to achieve a goal. And there's a term which Russell Brunson uses quite a lot. I know Chris always says I bring him up every time. It's called the soap opera sequence, in which, for example, you've noticed like when you watch Netflix, you binge watch something. The only reason you binge watch is because at the end of the episode, there's a cliffhanger. They leave something open, and so that people have to watch the second episode based on that last 5 minutes. So that's the whole idea of soap opera sequence. You would, let's say, send an email 1, you would open a loop at the end of email 1, so that people then expect or want to, they get excited about email number 2. So you will keep on sending like a chain of emails.
Yeah. So looking at this whole chart here, like what would you say, how many systems do you need for this? Like how many tools are involved here?
To be honest with you, there's just one tool at the moment. ActiveCampaign does all of this. Plus, obviously, you have your main website where you can collect your leads. You can have a landing page, which could be built, let's say, in Unbounce. You would have lead gen, which we, for example, use on our website to segment, because segmentation is so important, as you can see from this chart, that we have to understand what the interest is. In a typical form, let's say, if you break it down, you would have all these questions laid out, let's say, in a very vertical form, which is so boring. As you know, Chris, you've tested this quite a lot with lead gen, where you have, let's say, steps, and the first step, which I'll probably show you in a minute. But at the moment, you can start with just 3 tools, in my opinion: your website, your landing page, and lead gen.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes it like really interesting for a lot of people, because you don't need a lot of things in the background. You could literally do this with ActiveCampaign, or maybe comparable email marketing tool. Yeah, and it also doesn't really require a lot of technical setup as far as I see. I mean, I'm sure we're going to come to that later, how it looks inside the tool. But what would you say, what is the effort required from the technical level to make this work, to set this up?
I think it's just with any other tool, you need to know how it works and you need to set it up. I feel personally the challenge is to think about what would you send out in these nurture sequences. And for example, the other sequence which I want to quickly talk about is a booking sequence. So for example, if somebody does get an email and then at the end of the email you say we're offering let's say a 30-minute consultation, and people click on it and book a call with you. So at that point, the nurture sequence stops because it understands somebody has booked a call with you. So the booking sequence is quite essential as part of your sequence, because that would set up a start and stop for your
Yeah.
automation. Otherwise, you don't want to manually go in there and stop somebody's automation and fiddle
Yes.
with it. So it's important, coming back to your question, you would, let's say, define these emails. You would write them in a way that, again, they're entertaining, they're engaging, and they're educating, and the booking sequence as well. But I think the biggest trick is to keep them so simple that they don't look like newsletters.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So why don't we go into ActiveCampaign maybe? That would make it more practical to really see how this looks.
Yes, absolutely. Let me share my screen and we can go through it together. Okay, cool. So on my screen here, first of all, I want to show where we're using lead gen in our agency, which helps us segment this information at the first step. So as you can see on my screen, we have a contact us page of our agency, apextra.com/contact us. And the first question we ask our visitors is, which area do you need help with? And at this point, if somebody clicks landing page and click continue, then we would know now based on what their interest was. So this information gets tagged. And how that looks, I can open it up. So I have a test contact here. And as you can see, there's a tag here called interest landing page. And that tag is automatically assigned through lead gen with Zapier integration. And then at the same time, we also have a deal which gets created in ActiveCampaign. And that deal could move through different pipelines. I don't want to obviously open up our sales pipeline here because that is all sensitive information. But obviously, with every business, you could have your own sequence of a workflow of a sales pipeline. So in our case, we have, let's say, inquiry, then there's discovery call, then there's a demo booked, and then we send a proposal and sign an agreement or whatever. So the deal moves through different stages at that point. If a deal is lost, and at that point, we would start a nurture sequence. So what we would do is we would first of all add them to the prospects list. And depending on their interest, which we know, for example, is landing page, we then kick off the landing page long-term nurture sequence. And in this long-term nurture sequence, we would start emails, and it's very clever because we don't start with any generic email. I start telling them a story, and I tell them exactly why did I set up Apextra, what was the reason. So I literally start with this basic concept of storytelling, where I start with my own story. And then at every step, then with every email, we have one kind of goal or objective, which is offering some kind of value. So in our second email, we then give them free consultation. In the third email, we offer a checklist. In the fourth email, we offer some more stuff, but it goes on for at least 12 months. And that's where we have kind of ended it at the moment. But there's no reason why you wouldn't still continue. But it also means that you can't just let it run and not measure it. So there's one concept which I briefly want to touch upon, is lead scoring. So every time, let's say, a prospect opens an email or visits a page or downloads some kind of PDF, you would score them. And then based on that score, you would give them, let's say, grades, or you would set the temperature. So if, let's say, the score is between 10 to 30, you would set maybe warm, and between 30 to 80, you would set like hot. And if a lead is hot, meaning a prospect is hot because they've opened all these emails, at that point, you can then send a notification to your salespeople and tell them, hey, here you go, there's a lead which has shown interest and they've opened all these emails, they've downloaded this information. Let's call them. Let's see where they are in their buying cycle.
Yes. So this looks really interesting, and a lot of flows and processes. Like, how much time did it take you to learn all this and to get into this full blown automation?
Yeah, unfortunately, it has taken probably more than 6 months
Okay.
of continuous, like, deliberate learning. But the good thing is there's quite a few people who will help. Obviously, just like ourselves, we help now other agents, other companies, especially like consultancies, where we would sit down with them, understand their journeys, understand what bits of their business can be automated. So on the screen here, I'm showing like a book appointment sequence. In this case, we would tag the prospect not just as a lead, but prospect MQL, in which we know they are marketing qualified and they're booked a call with us. And then we would send out an email saying, here's a Calendly link. And the Calendly link basically, then if somebody books a call, this whole sequence ends. So the goal of this sequence is whenever a booking has happened through Calendly, because Calendly has a very deep integration with ActiveCampaign. So anytime something happens in Calendly, that information passes over to ActiveCampaign very quickly.
Yes. So basically, speaking about the content of these emails, what would you advise in terms of focusing on value versus making offers? Because there's lots of emails. You said 12 months, which I think is amazing that you have content for 12 months or even more. Like, what would you say is the ratio of providing them value versus selling in a way?
I'm not 100%. Like, I don't know it for sure, but I think Gary Vee put out this term jab jab hook, or is it jab 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 hook?
Something like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you give value, I think 3 or 4 times first before you make an offer or you offer your own stuff in a
Yeah.
way.
Makes sense.
So
I mean, the rule I have in my mind is 20%, like 80% value. It's a good way of thinking.
yeah, and also value doesn't mean that you don't sell. Value can mean you show authority. So for example, in our cases, we're giving value out, but we're also showing authority because we literally are telling stories of these case studies of these clients we worked with where we had a one or we learned something. So although it's value, but it's also kind of selling.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the important thing is this value aspect is so important online because you have to build a relationship. And I think that doesn't happen just from what many people do is using bots on LinkedIn as a reply or any kind of automated things without any psychology behind it. And with psychology, I just mean like really understanding what they need, what they want, segmenting the audience. And also when we talk about value and selling, you could kind of sell or give them offers with, let's say, free opt-in. So if you have, let's say, the next step of a product that could be still for free, so that would be, let's say, value still, but it would also be another opportunity for lead capture.
That's correct. And that's a very good point you raised because you can't, let's say, sell somebody who's not ready. So you would, let's say, take them onto this journey where, for example, a blog subscriber subscribes to the blog and then eventually downloads a lead magnet and then goes into your funnel. You wouldn't sell a blog subscriber directly your services when they don't even have shown any interest. And a very good example, which we have currently on our website, is on our blog. So, for example, in this case, we have a blog here on how to do webinars. And we have a pop-up, an exit overlay pop-up, which is asking people or visitors that if they want to learn more about webinars, they can sign up to our 5-day email course. And this 5-day email course lead magnet points to a landing page in which we're just literally asking them for name and email. Because at this point, we don't want to get all the other, let's say, contact information because they're still not ready to buy from us. We're just like literally building up this relationship. And once they enter their name and email, they go through this webinar course where there's 5 emails sent out at every day. We give them information, but at the end of it, we then start a long-term nurture sequence for a webinar funnel. So it's completely different to a landing page funnel.
Yeah. And another cool thing I remember you mentioned to me is, for example, if you follow up with your existing audience and you already have the
Yes.
lead and you send them more offers, you could send them to a landing page where you have the form fields pre-filled. And I think not
Yes.
everyone is doing that. Like, could you like explain like how could you set that up? That, for example, I'm on your list, you send me the
Yeah.
next offer, and then I click the button, and on the page I see the form already filled in with my email.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think there's a lot of tools out there like lead gen, Calendly. They have this flexibility. So, for example, let me open an email which we sent out to book a call with us. So, in this email, we kind of use Calendly, and within the email body, we use parameters to send out a booking, like a booking link, and that link is pre-filled with this information, so they don't have to literally fill the subscriber because we already know their name and email. We don't have to capture it again. So that information through the CRM gets passed over to that form, and it's already pre-filled. All the lead has to do is select a time on the calendar.
Yeah. So would you say that's easy to set up once people use a system like this?
Absolutely. All you have to do is, capture name and email initially, because that way you can personalize this whole relationship. So let me see if I can find it here. So there's a link here called "How to Book a Call with Us." Um, just sorry, one sec. I'm just moving this around. No, I don't have this example here, but I can share it in the show notes on how to parameterize that query.
Yeah, cool. So is there anything missing in this funnel before I come to another question? Like, did we go through we go through the whole thing?
Yes, we have. And I think the whole idea is that you nurture people at the right time in their journey. So, for example, again, coming to this point of blog subscribers, you would not start a long-term nurture sequence with them. You would send them email newsletters because that's what they've signed up for, and that's where the benefit of having a newsletter is. We touched upon why would people send out email newsletters. That's where the benefit is, where people literally sign up for that information.
Yeah, I mean, this looks really, really cool, and I really like the fact it's so automated, and it's automated for a long time. Like this idea of I could send my contacts content for 12 months or more.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
limit to it. I mean, automation has really no limit, and
yeah.
it's amazing what you can do.
And the cool thing is you kind of you're documenting this journey. So, for example, anytime you add a new case study, you would also then add another email into your already pre-built set of emails. Like, once you have, let's say, a year's worth of content, all you have to do is top it up.
Great. So I wanted to do like a little thought experiment because I think a lot of marketing agencies are listening to this. So let's imagine I'm your client, right? And I have a marketing agency, and I sell, like full service marketing agency. I just sell branding, I sell video, I sell websites. What could I do? And if I didn't have a partner who would build this for me, where would I start? Like, what's like a step by step guide for me to build this myself? Is that possible for me?
Um, yes, you could, but it does obviously mean that you have to use some kind of tool for some kind of sequencing. To begin with, let's say you would invest in something like lead gen, where you would have a simple form where you capture what their interest is, number one. Once you capture that information, you would put this information in a system which you can use to know where they are in your entire sales cycle. Even if you, let's say, use MailChimp, you tag this information, what they were interested in. Even in MailChimp, you can add tags. And then based on that tagging, you would then send them email sequences. So you can do that as a bare minimum thing using, let's say, any other tool out there like MailChimp or ConvertKit. I know you've used ConvertKit quite a lot, and you could add tags in there too.
Yes, but I think the important thing is there's quite a difference in the type of tools. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of basic ones. There's then those that allow you to do basic automation, and then there's stuff like this.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the type of tool often makes a difference.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because if you're looking at like all the tools out there, some of the tools are really good at email, but some of the tools are really good for CRM stuff. So, for example, Pipedrive, it's really cool. That's a CRM. But if you wanted to do email automation, email newsletters, and deal management in one system, it's hard to find that balance unless you spend a lot of money with Marketo or HubSpot or Alacoa and all these other tools. ActiveCampaign fits that bill.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think this looks great. Why don't we switch back to the camera unless there's anything? Okay, cool. So another thing that comes to my mind is there's obviously not only SMEs and agency brands listening to this, but also, let's say, corporates and enterprises, and they often use these tools, these huge tools like Marketo, for example. Would you advise them to work with those tools, or would you say those like ActiveCampaign, what you've shown us here, is also relevant to them? Would you advise them to switch to something like this?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I would say unfortunately, ActiveCampaign is powerful, but it's not geared towards enterprise yet. Because we've been having issues when migrating data over from, let's say, HubSpot, or if you have a team of more than, let's say, 20, 30 people with lots of salespeople, with lots of complex stuff, ActiveCampaign would probably hit its limits.
Right. And what would you say to those people who say email marketing is dead? You hear that sometimes a lot. You know, there's some companies, some brands that have their marketing slogans. What do you say about that?
They haven't then really built a list. So it's all about building a list. So for example, when we have a customer list in our own agency, the first point of contact for me to, let's say, sell something would be my list. And we've seen this, Chris, where we've gone through our existing customers and showed them an offer. And at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. If you have a 10,000 contact list of customers, there would be people who would buy.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, the advice is not just take everything that serious, what a lot of marketers and gurus say. If they come up with these hard lines saying, oh, this is dead, now we do this, websites are dead, and there's a lot of those people.
In our long-term nurture sequence, we have an open rate of 70%, which is huge. I don't think we can achieve that through any other tool. So it depends of, like, obviously, how you use email marketing. If you send a generic email to everyone, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah. So, and another big problem companies have is prioritization. Like, what should they spend their time and budget on? So then there is this whole marketing field we talked about, the email marketing field. But then they could also say, oh, we want to now invest into social media. We want to invest into blog writing, SEO. We want to improve our nurture sequence using a sales team. Now, this is the tricky part. But what would be your advice on this? Like, what should be a priority, and when should they do something like this?
I think this is almost like the foundation. Once you have set it up, you would then add more channels to generate traffic and leads. But if you don't have this foundation set up, then you can't really scale. You would always have this then problem of, like, how do you deal with your leads? Although it's a good problem to have, but I would spend my energy and focus first to, get business from our leads and try to upsell them, cross-sell them various things, because they've already shown interest. They've already, let's say, come through the door. Let's nurture them.
Yes. Okay, makes sense. So in this, what you looked at here at the screen, or to show us, is also what you do for brands, right? So if anyone wants to learn more about, could they just email you about it and ask about it?
Yes, we have a page on our website around marketing automation, where it's apextra.com/marketing automation, and we go through all the stuff which we have done for our agency. We do this for other clients, and we sit down with them, go through the entire kind of systems and see what they have in place, and build a strategy together where they can see the value of, like, how a marketing's automated system can help in nurturing leads, managing them, and overall, generating more sales.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. And I'm a big fan of automation too. And as we said, it's really possible for any business to use this. You don't have to have lots of employees. As you said at the start, you could have 1 or 2 people, and you could start somewhere. And it's really a foundation. And it's those things that help you grow. It's not like we're looking at automating admin. This is automating growth. This is automating sales. And that's the important
Correct.
part, I think, about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think then if anyone is interested, just message Wasim. We put some more content here in the notes. And I'm sure, I mean, this was just the start. We have probably a lot more on automation and on other topics like this to share. Anything else on this, Wasim?
That's it. I think in the future we will cover more areas of like how we use Zapier and other automated cool stuff, because there's so much out there. So let's keep it going.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.